today we are busy with the economic NSSC syllabus of Namibia. We are at 1.2 B and C. We will still look at the economic systems, but today we will specifically try to identify what is advantages and the disadvantages of a market and a planned economic system. We will also look at merit goods and public goods, as I've mentioned in the previous lesson, and we will look at externalities. Externalities I will explain through social cost and social benefits. And then after that, for lesson 7, we will look at the features of a mixed economic system. Okay, just remember there are other names for a market economic system. So if I ask you what is the features of a capitalist system, then you know I want the features of a market economy. If I ask you what is the features of a command economy, then you know I want the features of a planned economy. Okay, if you you can also do homework on this. Take all these features which was given to you and discussed with you in the previous lesson, and then identify which of these features is advantageous. That you can do in a 10-minute, 15-minute minutes. That will be enough for that. Okay, if we look at advantages for a planned economic system, the one good thing is that the government take into consideration externalities like pollution, because they know how it affects the people in the country, and their main aim is not to make profits. As I've said, they look after the welfare of the citizens. So that's normally an advantage for them. A very important advantage for this system is that all the money they earn from all their assets and all their businesses go to the government. You remember that. But what is good, that they distribute all this money equally between everyone in the country. So we can say that the distribution of wealth in this economy is more equally. And then in this economies, it is also very important to realize that they supply enough merit goods and public goods, and that they pay for all of that. It is supplied by the government, and they supply it efficiently. So, for example, like free universities, that is the example of a merit good. There are parks and recreation centers, which is the example of a public good, which the government also provide in a planned economy, which is all advantages of a planned economy. Okay, if we look at the advantages of a market economy, the shortages and surpluses that occur is very quickly solved by demand and supply. It is not such a long, expensive, time-consuming process than in a planned economy, which the reason for them is they must go back to the officials of this 5-year plan, and they must do replanning. But in a market economy, it works through the forces of demand and supply and is quickly solved. You as a consumer can choose in a market economy, and not only how much you want, what you want, and in what qualities you want it. Then people get financial incentives. So they try to work harder, they try to produce better quality. It's the same for firms. If you can get more profits by selling a better quality, that will definitely be your aim. Try to produce something else that somebody else is not producing, or if you produce the same, try to produce it at a better quality or provide a better service. Okay, in a market economy, there are also less cost involved in the planning of this economy because there's no government officials involved in working on the planning of this. So this is features for a market and a planned economy. Now I will explain to you just merit goods. Now you have picked up through the previous lesson and this lesson that a merit good is something is supplied by the government. Why do the government supply merit goods in our country? And that is why I've said in the beginning that our country is a mixed economy, or use a mixed economic system, because they step in and they provide merit goods. So they provide hospitals and they provide schools. That is examples of merit goods, and very relevant for you, because the government do this. They know if it must be in the hands of the private sector, then it will not be supplied enough of it. And on the other hand, if the private sector supply, it will also be too expensive for everyone to afford it. So you can think of private hospitals or private schools as good examples that they are supplied by the private sector. But if that was the only schools and hospitals available, a lot of people in this country would not be able to afford these goods and services. So that's why a government step in and provide this type of goods and services that are not supplied efficiently by the private sector. Why is it not applied sufficiently? Because the private sector's aim is to maximize profits. And if they do it, they will ask prices that is not affordable for everyone in the country. Okay, if we then look at public goods and services, public goods and services are goods and services that the government also supply, because the private sector don't want to supply it at all. Why don't the private sector want to supply it? Because these goods and services, you can't attach a price to the use of this good or service. So if I talk about a street light, I can't say you must pay us $10 to use this street light, because you may never pass by that street light. So it's not possible for me to charge any person that use that street light, because I don't know when they're using it, if they are using it, and so forth. So the main reason what I actually want to explain to you is very difficult in the case of public goods to attach a price to the good and service of this product. It is just the same as the city police in Windhoek, that they supply a service, but they provide security to me, but I may not use them for 1 year. A year may pass that I never call them, and I never make use of their services. So how will they charge me for this? Okay, so here is a product that the private sector don't supply because a price is not attached to it. And you understand, if there's no price attached to it, they can't make profits. That's why the private sector don't supply it. Now the government step in, they supply public goods and services because they know that we need it. It improves the welfare of the citizens in the country. It's good for us to feel secure. It's good for us to be safe if we walk in the streets, and that's why they supply these type of products, which we call public goods and services. Okay, so if you now remember, I have said one disadvantage of a market economy is that they don't supply merit goods and public goods. And you understand now why they don't do it. And in a planned economy, it is efficiently supplied by the government. Okay, then we look at social cost and social benefits. So you remember that I've said the private sector don't consider externalities because when they do consider it, it will decrease their profits. And that is the reason why they don't take it into consideration most of the times. So very important, if I ask you what is social cost, you must tell me that it is the private cost and the external cost involved in the supplying or producing of a good and a service. So if I talk about private costs, this is the cost that I can measure when I build, say, a hotel at the Avis Dam. So that is the wages, the cement, the sand, and all of that are used in this production process. But the external cost is something I can't measure. So if they build that hotel near the Avis Dam, there will be lots of negative effects that occur, which we can't measure. We know that they are there, we know that they exist, but we can't really put a value to that. So the animals like the kudus or the African eagles will not come there as they are doing now to drink water or to try to get food and so forth. So that is the external cost that will occur because they decide to build a hotel, for example, at the Avis Dam. So you would, if you answer a question like this, you tell me that social cost is equal to private cost plus external cost. You explain to me what is private cost and what is external cost. Remember, a private cost is experienced by those who built this hotel. So those who got the tender to build it or those involved in the construction of this. And external cost is experienced by a third party. So me and you have to always go to the dam to walk there. We will not see all the animals anymore, and it will not be the same as in the past. So if you now ask me what is external cost, then it is just your social cost minus your private cost, and that what is left is the external cost that we say is a disadvantage for the market economy because they don't take it into consideration. Okay, then we have external benefits. This is just the opposite of external cost. External benefits, you also calculate the private benefits plus the external benefits give you the social benefits. So if you ask me what is private benefits, this is a benefit that can be measured. So this is, for example, the rent or if they have a hotel, the wages that workers will get, or if this is a person whose hotel it is, the profits he will earn out of providing accommodation to tourists. That is the private benefits. We can calculate it in accounting. And then the external benefits will perhaps be that, as I've said, it's not measurable in money. It is experienced by a third party. And there's people who can now work there that got training and that have a better standard of living. We can't actually measure it, but they can see they can afford a better goods and services, so experience a better standard of living. Then it is also an external benefit that if they, for example, build proper roads to that area, that it also less stressful and more safe to drive there. Okay, and that will be all for today's lesson. Tomorrow or in the next lesson, we will continue with the rest of the mixed economic features. we are busy with the economic NSSC syllabus of Namibia. We are at 1.2, but today we do the C part where we evaluate the economic systems. We have started to evaluate it by looking at the advantages and disadvantages of the planned and the market economy. We will continue with the mixed economy today. Okay, firstly, before I start with the mixed economy, I want you to remember, if I talk about the economic sector, that I talk about the primary sector. And this sector is where natural resources is extracted, and like gold, for example. And then the next economic sector that we get in every country is the secondary sector. They also call this the intermediate sector, or the sector where they use the resources, the natural resources, to change into a semi-final or a final good and service. Okay, and then we get the third sector, which is the tertiary sector. The tertiary sector is the service sector. In this sector, it has to do with marketing this final products, distributing it to me and you as clients, which are using it. Okay, then there is also some important information that you must know to understand future explanations. There's a difference between privatization and nationalisation. You already have picked up that market economies is mostly, and as I've said, owned and controlled by the private sector. So if there is disadvantages, then the government will step into a market economy and, say, take over a private sector firm. And that firm will then, that process of taking over a private sector firm is called nationalisation. So nationalisation, if I use that word, then you must know that this is when the government take over a private sector firm, a firm that was used by somebody like me and you, or not used, managed and owned by a private person. So, and then privatization means that this is in the case of a planned economy, where we have said that they have no incentive to be more efficient because of all the profits going to the government. So this firms is sometimes then not profitable. And in a case like that, the government decide, let us rather sell it to the private sector. Our firms sell it to the private sector because the chance, if the private person is in charge of this, that it will become a more profitable business. And then it is to the advantage of the economy because on the profits a private person must pay tax. Okay, so clearly understand what is privatization and what is nationalisation, because it may appear in a market in mixed economy due to the advantages and disadvantages that you experience in a market and mixed economy. Okay, so if you again look at the disadvantages that was discussed in the previous lesson, for a planned and a mixed economy, there are 5 market failures which we can pick up if we go back and look at that. The first one is the married goods and services, which we have said that is not supplied efficiently by the private sector. Then the next one is the public goods and services, which we have said is not supplied at all. And then we have another market failure. You remember I have said that if there's only one firm supplying a product, they can sometimes charge prices too high. So this we call monopolistic powers. They have the power to set the price or the power to set the output. And this is also a failure. And in cases like that, where you have problems with monopolies that ask too high prices, the government will step in and set a minimum or a maximum price, say, on water, and say no one that supply water may sell it for, say, more than $14 per cubic liter. So that is a maximum price. Then the government put prices on product. For example, if they see a bakery that are the only bakery that supply bread, then they will say all brown bread. Normal brown bread may not be sold more than $10. So you see they put a maximum on products like that like water and bread, that is necessities. Because if there are only one firm, again I can put the emphasis of that, they have monopolistic powers to control or the price, that it is too high, or they control the output, that they don't put enough of that product on the market. Then the last failure, there are 5 failures as you can pick up. The last failure is the unequal distribution of wealth, which is very relevant in a market economy. Because those who produce more, which are more successful, will earn more. And that causes that some people have lots of money and others very little. Okay, so that is the privatization, nationalisation, and we have looked at the market failures so far. So you can use do group work again for students in a group, and you give them 10 to 15 minutes to discover what features will a mixed economy have. Now, before they do this, they must consider that what is a mixed economy? A mixed economy exists because of the disadvantages that is in a market economy. And because of those disadvantages, the government step in and provide certain products. And as soon as the government step in and provides some goods and services that is not security and defense, then it's not actually anymore a market economy. Then it becomes a mixed economy. And the same story in a case of a planned economy. If there are disadvantages in a planned economy and the government feel that there are businesses that are not profitable and they want to sell these businesses to the private sector, that it can be run profitable and that the government have less costs that they must cover every year of that business, and they can at least earn taxes out of that business. But this process of privatization actually means that it is not only the government that own all the resources and all the assets and all the businesses. Then there are the private sector businesses involved, and that means it's not a pure planned economy anymore. So take all of this into consideration, that as soon as the government step into a market economy, it becomes a mixed. As soon as the private sector get into a planned economy, it becomes also mixed. So take this time and discover what the features of a mixed economy may be. Okay. See if you also agree with me that the government and the private sector are involved in a mixed economy. That must be one feature. And that the government step in to solve failures like married goods, supply enough of it, public goods, supply enough of it, because in a market economy there are not enough merit goods or public goods at all, if it is left to a market economy, then distribute the wealth more equally. How can the government do that? They tax the rich at a higher percentage than they tax the poor. So they take from the rich and give it to the poor to solve that problem. So again, the government step in, and then it's not a market economy anymore. Then the government also step in if the private sector businesses don't produce products or don't take externalities into consideration. Then the government step in and set laws and say, according to the laws of this country, you must put filters in your systems to avoid the air pollution, because this is negative for the people that walk in that area or live in that area. Okay, and then another feature of this system is that they maximize profits, like in the private sector, but they also look after the welfare by providing merit goods and public goods. Assets are owned by the private sector and also owned by the government, like you can see in Namibia the case is. And prices are normally set by demand and supply, but the government step in case of necessities and if the prices is too high. Okay, as a conclusion, you must understand the advantages of a planned and a market economy. You must understand what is merit goods and public goods, social cost and social benefits, and privatization and nationalisation, and discover then the features that will occur in a mixed economy. You are offered exam questions here. You can ask exam questions on features of any of these, and normally it counts between 8 and 6 marks. Then you can look at what is the advantage of a planned economy. What is the advantage if a government change from a planned economy to a mixed economy, like Cuba have done a few years ago.